Hello everyone, welcome to SJ's classes. Today as part of this video lesson, I will discuss chapter 5 of George Orwell's famous novella Animal Farm. I hope you have watched the previous episode in which I discussed chapter 4. Please do watch the video before you continue watching this. From chapter 4 we understood that both Snowball and Napoleon they are trying to spread the word of the rebellion to the neighboring farms. We also acquainted ourselves with the two neighboring farms on the farm, which are Foxwood and Pinchfield. It's also in chapter 4 that we witness the first battle between the animals and the human beings. The animals they come out victorious in this battle, and they decide to call this particular battle as Battle of Cowshed, as it is the cowshed from where the animals had carried out an ambush against the human beings. They also found Mr. Jones' gun on the farm. He forgot to take it while he fled the farm, and they decide to fire the gun twice. One is on October 12th to celebrate the anniversary of Battle of Cowshed, and the other is on a midsummer day to celebrate the anniversary of the rebellion. The rebellion which overthrew human beings from the farm. Now let's look at some of the important events in chapter 5. Chapter 5 begins with the disappearance of Molly. Molly is a character which is symbolic of people who are materialistic, and Molly is someone who preferred to be a slave to these materialistic aspects, and to live the life of a materialistic person, to be with materialistic people. She escapes the farm. For many weeks, the animals did not have any information on where Molly was, and later on, some of the pigeons they reported that they had seen her on the other side of Wellington, and she was between the shafts of a smart dog cart, which was painted red and black, and which was standing outside a public house, which means that Molly, in fact, had become a slave for a human being. And in January, there came bitterly hard weather. The earth was like iron, and nothing could be done in the fields. Many meetings were held by the pigs and the other animals on the farm to decide on or to plan out the work of the coming season. And we find that the pigs, they had come to an agreement that all questions of farm policy, matters regarding the farm, the functioning of the farm would be decided by the pigs. Earlier, we read that the pigs, they did not actually work on the farm, but they supervised all kinds of works that happened on the farm. And as of now, they have elevated themselves to a superior position, where in which they will decide matters of great importance with respect to the farm. But the animals still had a role in the functioning of the farm. The decisions which were made by the pigs would be ratified by a majority vote. Everything worked well except for the relationship between the two important characters in this novella. They are Snowball and Napoleon. These two disagreed at every point where disagreement was, in fact, possible. For example, if one of them suggested sowing a bigger acreage with barley, the other would suggest that it was better if we sow oats. And one of them said that this field was perfect for cabbages, the other would say that no, it was good for nothing but fruits. So there was severe disagreement between Snowball and Napoleon. And it's Snowball who comes up with the idea of constructing a windmill from which they could generate electrical power. And Snowball said that if we could generate electric power, then this would light the stalls on the farm and also warm them in winter, and it would also help them introduce machines on the farm like circular saw, chaff cutter, manual slicer, electric milking machine, etc., that would lessen the workload of animals on the farm. This particular farm was an old-fashioned farm, so the animals did not They had not heard of anything of this kind before. They had only primitive machinery in their farm. So they listened to Snowball with great astonishment about all these about this idea of all these fantastic machines that would be introduced on the farm, the windmill that would be constructed from which you could actually generate electricity. So they listened to Snowball with great astonishment, and within a few weeks, Snowball's plan for the windmill were fully worked out. Snowball took or extracted the mechanical details for this particular windmill from certain books which belonged to Mr. Jones. Books like 1000 Useful Things to Do About the House, Every Man His Own Bricklayer, Electricity for Beginners, etc. And we read that it's only Napoleon who held himself aloof from this entire activity. He declared himself against the windmill from the very beginning. But one day he visits the place where Snowball had drawn all the plans or made the blueprint of this particular windmill. He comes there, he walks around it, he looks at it very carefully, closely. He sniffs at them, and finally, what he does is he urinates over the plan, and he walks out without uttering a word. That is how he insults the plan which Snowball had made for their farm. The whole farm was deeply divided on the subject of the windmill. Snowball said that we would have to work only 3 days if we install if we construct the windmill and generate electricity from it. And he did agree that the construction of the windmill would actually be a hefty process. It would be a difficult process. In fact, what Snowball wanted was he wanted to work more on the farm and produce more food so that they could survive winter. So the entire farm was divided on this subject. There were a particular faction whose slogan was "Vote for Snowball" and the 3-day week, and there was this other faction who supported Napoleon and who said that vote for Napoleon and the full manger. Perhaps Benjamin, the donkey, was the only animal who did not side with either factions. He refused to believe that either food would become more or that windmill would save work. He said that windmill or no windmill, life would go on as it had always gone on. That is, badly. Perhaps Snowball is the only character. No, I mean, Benjamin is the only character who realizes what reality is. And at last, the day came when Snowball's plans were completed. And at the meeting, which was held on Sunday, the question of whether or not to begin work on the windmill was put to vote. And when the animals had assembled in the big barn, Snowball stood up and he spoke to them about his ideas regarding building the windmill. And Napoleon stands up after that, and he responded to the statements made by Snowball. He said very quietly that the windmill was nonsense and that he advised nobody to vote for it, and promptly sat down again. And Snowball again, he counter argues the statements or the arguments raised against the idea of constructing a windmill by Napoleon. So after Snowball's speech, animals were carried away, and it was like they, unanimously agreed with Snowball's idea of going ahead with construction of the windmill. Now, chapter 5 is important because it's in chapter 5 that things take a turn for worse. As of now, it's like the animals are working together. It's not that they are divided between themselves, but things are going to take a turn in this particular chapter. Now, as soon as Snowball finished his speech, Napoleon gave a high-pitched whimper which nobody had actually heard before. And after this, there was a terrible barking or baying sound outside, and 9 enormous dogs, which were actually raised by Napoleon, they came dashing straight for Snowball. Snowball saw this, and he, sprang up from his place just in time to escape their snapping jaws. Everybody was surprised. They were shocked. They did not understand what was happening. Napoleon, with the dogs, followed Snowball, and they chased him out of the farm. And finally, Napoleon, he gave up a speech in front of all the animals. He announced that from now on, Sunday morning meetings would come to an end. It's in this it's in these during these Sunday meetings that they discussed the plans for the next week or the coming season. It's during these meetings that they made important decisions with respect to the functioning of the farm. And Napoleon says that these Sunday meetings would come to an end. They have been abolished. They were unnecessary. And he says that these meetings they wasted time. He says that in future all questions relating to the working of the farm would be settled by a special committee of pigs which would be presided over by himself. These would meet in private and afterwards communicate their decisions to the others. This is why I said that things would take a turn for worse in this particular chapter. Earlier, animals had a role in the functioning of the farm, but as of now, that has been limited by Napoleon. He says that the pigs would meet in private, they would take decisions, and later on these decisions would be communicated to them. Earlier, decisions were put to vote and would be ratified by a majority vote, but as of now, no, there were not going to be any voting. The pigs would decide, and they would communicate the decision to the animals. The animals, says Napoleon, would assemble on Sunday mornings to salute the flag and also to sing Beasts of England and also to receive their orders for the week. And afterwards, Squealer, who is an important character in this novella, he is sent round the farm to explain the new arrangement to the others. It would be nice if you read the way in which Squealer justifies Comrade Napoleon's actions to the other comrades on the farm. He says that, "Comrades, I trust that every animal here appreciates the sacrifice that Comrade Napoleon has made in taking this extra labor upon himself." So, Squealer says that what Napoleon has done is a sacrifice. Taking this extra labor of being the leader, of taking decisions, this is a sacrifice which Comrade Napoleon has made. So, this is how Squealer puts it before the other animals. And he says that, "Do not imagine, comrades, that leadership is a pleasure. On the contrary, it is a deep and heavy responsibility. No one believes more firmly than Comrade Napoleon that all animals are equal. He would be only too happy to let you make your decisions for yourself. But sometimes you might make the wrong decisions, comrades, and then where should we be? Suppose you had decided to follow Snowball with this moonshine of Windmills. Snowball, who, as we now know, was no better than a criminal." So this is how he justifies Comrade Napoleon's actions for the other animals. He says that Comrade Napoleon believes that all animals are equal. He would only be too happy to let you make the decisions, but now what if you take the wrong decision? Just like Snowball. And he addresses Snowball as a criminal. So he justifies the actions, or Napoleon's, actions which we just witnessed. And every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, the animals assemble in the big barn to receive their orders for the week, just like Napoleon said earlier. Now, after hoisting of the flag, the animals were required to file past the skull in a reverent manner. The skull belonged to Old Major. From chapter 2, we understood that Old Major died and he was buried at the foot of the orchard. And his skull, they excavated it, they cleaned it, and they kept it at the flagstaff, the foot of the flag. And the animals were supposed to file past or walk past the skull in a reverent manner before entering the barn. Now, all the pigs, they decided to stay in the farmhouse. Napoleon with Squealer and other pig named Minimus, who had a remarkable gift for composing songs and poems, sat on the front of the raised platform with the 9 young dogs forming a semicircle round them and the other pig sitting behind. The rest of the animals sat facing them in the main body of the barn. And Napoleon read out the orders for the week in a gruff, soldierly style. And after a single singing of Beasts of England, all the animals dispersed. Now, this is how meetings happened on Sundays. Earlier, they used to come, they used to discuss, they used to debate, they used to, ratify the decision which were made by the pigs. But as of now, they used to come to the farm. They used to pay respect to the flag as well as old Major's skull, and they sat before Napoleon and his team to receive orders for the next week. On the third Sunday after the Snowball's expulsion, the animals were somewhat surprised to hear that Napoleon, he announces that the windmill was to be built after all. Earlier, we saw that he was against this plan from the very start. He did not want the windmill to be constructed, and he even urinated on top of the blueprint which Snowball had made. But as of now, he says that the windmill, Napoleon says that the windmill would be in fact constructed. And that evening, Squealer explained privately to the other animals that Napoleon had never in reality been opposed to the windmill. On the contrary, it was he who had advocated it in the beginning. So we understand how Squealer manipulates, the animals. These animals, they have a very poor memory. We saw that earlier. While they were trying to educate themselves, they could hardly remember the alphabets of English language. So these animals had a poor memory, and Squealer seems to manipulate that particular aspect of these animals. He says that Napoleon had never been opposed to the idea of windmill. It was he who had advocated it in the beginning, and he says that it was Napoleon's plans, and Snowball had actually stolen it from Napoleon. So the windmill finally becomes the creation of Napoleon. So this is where chapter 5 comes to an end. Thank you so much for being with me. Please do watch the other video lessons posted on my channel with respect to this on this particular novella. Thank you so much.